Welcome to episode 9 of Insight Talk. We are here to go live with different personalities from trending topics, right? My name is Ravin, and over here we have two great personalities to discuss with us and delve into issues of young voters, right? So let me introduce Shahril Hamdan, who is the Umno Youth exco, and Sathiah Sudakaran, who is the youth chief of myPPP. Okay, so we have Umno Youth chief Khairi Jamaluddin have stated that he estimates about 6 million youth voters to come out and vote for the coming elections, right? But who they vote for is still remains a question. So with election just around the corner, right? What does BN has to offer for the youth? Maybe Shahril, you can start first.
Thanks, Ravin. Thanks for having us. What BN has to offer for young people? I think we're slightly hamstrung here because while the opposition has come up with their own manifesto, ours will be announced, I think on the 7th of April, right? So that's a couple of weeks away. But what we know from the months leading up to today is that BN's manifesto and BN's value proposition to voters and especially young voters, is one where BN really thinks about the future beyond 5 years. And I think that is the distinctive difference between what we will offer and what the other side does. In the sense that we are very careful, right, about not being too populist. We are very careful about not promising the moon and the stars. We are very careful about ensuring that whatever we do in the next couple of years, because of how important this period is in our country's growth trajectory, is responsible, lays the right foundations for something, a horizon that's even greater and a lot longer than just one election cycle, and that's where TN50 comes into play. If you don't lay the right foundations in the next couple of years, I think we will pay the price immensely, more so than perhaps any mistakes or any kind of excesses in the 80s and 90s, just simply, without going into details, simply because of the way the world economy is, the regional economy is, there's really no room for too much excesses. So I think the vision is there, the TN50 vision is there, and I like to think that the flavor will be in the manifesto in some form, and I think our list of propositions will reflect that long-term view that I think is absent from the other side, and I hope young people will see that difference.
All right, and going on to say that Najib has taken a pro-youth stand for the coming general election, and he has hinted that GE14 manifesto will include more towards youths. Okay, what kind of proposals that you all would like to see in that manifesto? Right. Maybe Sathiah, you can explain.
Thank you, Navin, for having us here today. I add on to what my brother Shahril said. The first time ever, I think, in this upcoming general election, Prime Minister Najib going to introduce, unveil the youth manifesto. So this thing, I think, first time ever happened in Malaysia. So that could be adding on to the general manifesto, which BN will be placing on the 7th April. I hope that it will be cover generally all the youths, whereby we have already engaged with youths today with TN50, and you have seen that our Brigadier General YB Khairi Jamaluddin inspired all the youths, and he is, I can say, the youth icon, where he have influenced many young voters, especially in rural and also urban areas, to cover what is the Malaysia, what kind of a Malaysia we want to see in future. So I hope that, I urge all the youths, especially the youths, to be more responsible. So yes, we as a Malaysian, we must be a responsible citizen. So that's what we are aiming for. And with that responsibilities, I think we could the youth can play a major role in upcoming election. So the future is in
the hands of the youth. Okay, so Shahril, what would you like to see proposed in the manifesto? What would you like to see included into them? Right.
So specifically, I suppose what we like to see, especially in the youth manifesto, as mentioned, Sathiah mentioned about how this is the first time, right?
First time.
That there is a distinctive manifesto. I think that says a lot about how BN and Datuk Sri Najib is putting a lot of emphasis on this particular segment of young people. Specifically what I like to see is, without repeating myself too much about how I want to see a continuity into a horizon that's longer, and exciting young people about the future beyond 5 years. Because you've got to be careful about being seen to be electorally, being seen to be too conservative, being seen to be too safe. Young people are by nature, they are quite risky. They want to, they want to, see exciting things. They want to be excited by the proposals and not just say, look, this is how it's got to be, and you need the economy to be fiscally responsible. Yada yada yada. That might not excite them. But there's a way to excite young people without actually selling out, the long-term future of the economy, and that's where I think the principle will be. But sorry to belabor the point. Specifically, what I'd like to see is a solution, or the beginnings of a solution about our job market. Although we think about TN50 and beyond 5 years, we need some solutions now about young people's careers. So that's going to be very important for young people to see in BN's proposals. In the sense that how are we going to ensure employment, youth unemployment is brought down from the teens that it is now, percentage-wise, something closer in line with the national average of a couple percentage points. So I think that how specific and the kind of proposals and prescriptions that BN would give, and not just promising X thousand number of jobs, because anyone can do that. But having some details and some plans about how you incorporate this automation, fourth industrial revolution, and all these new things that are happening. How do we get young people to understand that BN has a plan to ensure that these new technological revolutions and things that are happening will not come at the expense of jobs and job security and skills. Because we know that the trends around the world will show that certain jobs become obsolete. So we need to have a solution now about short-term fixes to the job market, which is already causing some pain to some people, to many people. But at the same time saying that beyond reducing youth unemployment in the next couple of years, which maybe doesn't have much to do with automation, in the next 5 years, this is BN's plan to ensure that young people are not left behind when automation really takes over in all the. I just came from an oil and gas conference, and even in those kind of traditional big industries, there are concerns about how engineers might be, less engineers might be needed for certain tasks simply because of the fact that technology and computers can start doing that. We're not even talking about robots. So these are the things that I think young people know about notionally, and BN needs to show that there's a plan for them in the next election cycle.
Right, great. So basically, you have to touch the surface on telling that cost of living and unemployment is a pressing issue for the youth in Malaysia. So are you going to propose something more towards putting this thing to an end? Like you said, definitely we can't create many jobs out there. But over the years, if the government BN is in control, how would you like to overcome these issues?
I would say that, Barisan Nasional government, currently we are in, especially I take as an example is Wilayah Persekutuan Federal Territories, whereby we are offering, just yesterday, Tunku Adnan, Sri Utama Tunku Adnan said that we have offered almost about 80,000, more than 80,000 housing for under the Rumah Week scheme, whereby a lot of youths, we are encouraging youths to buy this first home. And we have a lot of projects like PP1AM and Prima Housing Scheme and Council Home, which is initiated by Sri Utama Tunku Adnan Tunku Mansur, by providing a lot of youths nowadays, they're suffering with the cost of living, that we understood that. So considering all these constraints facing by all the youths today, I think the government is now ready to provide a platform for the youths in various
sectors.
Various sections. So probably we can say that we are in upper hand. Barisan Nasional is in upper end, whereby whatever promises made by Barisan Nasional almost we have delivered. And unless the opposition, which is we don't know yet, and it's uncertain and fractured, we can see that among the opposition parties. So, but the hope for on the youth, and as well the youth, what's aspiration they have thrown to Barisan Nasional. I think we can clearly see in the TN50 vision, and whereby almost about 70,000 aspiration received by the ministry, and they have counted for all these aspiration count, and we have well planned for the future of the young generation, especially under the leadership of YBKJ. That's what we can see. A clear vision we can see, but otherwise we won't be here today. You know?
True.
So many young, the Barisan Nasional government has offered a lot of platform for youths, especially under the SLIM, scheme Latihan, One Malaysia.
Yep.
We have offered many courses for them. As what my brother Shahril said, the government is actually looking into developing nation. So by 2020, we must be a well-developed nation. So we need to achieve, in order to achieve all these things, these are things in the pipeline.
Okay, so your Najib's brainchild is TN50.
Yeah.
Briefly, can you explain what is TN50 and how it's going to help the youths over the future?
So the line that we always hear is bottom up, and that's really the defining feature of TN50. I think most people who view this will understand that it is not, TN50 is not in any way trying to erase any achievements of different visions in the past, Vision 2020 being the one that we have actually grown up with. But even the name says Vision 2020, which means it ends in 2020. Whether or not we achieve the 9 stipulated goals under Wawasan 2020 is a matter of debate. But Wawasan 2020 itself does not specify very clearly what the indications of or indicators of success is. It's more, correct, motherhood statements about being a united nation, being a an advanced developed nation. Which I suppose on the advanced developed one we can actually measure that through GDP per capita and all the rest of it. So that's fine. But the others are quite subjective. Whereas TN50 is bottom up and quite specific in its contents. It's still a work in progress. Because it's bottom up, it's not something that bureaucrats or civil servants or politicians just sit down in a room for 2 months and then cook up a document, right? It's really about trying to gather the tens and thousands of aspirations from millions of young people, especially, to understand what exactly they want this country to look like across different areas, not just economically, but also socially. What is the role of even how do we ensure that religion is not left behind? What kind of Muslim majority nation do we want? Those are touchy, difficult subjects that take time to articulate. And obviously, it's not just one particular ethnic group or just KL people talking about it. It's across the country. So I think what you can expect when TN50 rolls out, over time, what we have had is this canvas of youth aspirations that's been collected. So we've got the aspirasi.
It's all well documented.
Correct. That's documented already. It's available online at the myTN50 website. But that's just the voices of young people. That has not yet been translated into what exactly the prescriptions will be. And this, I think we make no apologies that this takes time.
True.
Because if you want to come up with a specific plan, this is a working document that will always be revised, but at least we began with a very clear set of aspirations. And just to share some general ones, it appears to us that young people tend to be very focused on unity, right? So then there's no longer this kind of heavy attachment to historical baggage so much. They're more willing to look beyond ethnicity, look beyond traditional separation lines between people. So that's quite, for me personally, quite exciting to see. Young people are very worried about this fourth industrial revolution, AI taking over jobs, so they really want TN50 to think carefully, because even if they might be okay with traditional jobs for now, they know their younger siblings, they know their future kids will be the ones to be tested by this. So there's a lot of focus there. There's also stuff around entrepreneurship, volunteerism. So young Malaysians, I think they want to be more than just workers. They want to be more than just labourers. They want to be involved with the society in whatever things that they find passionate in. So stuff around women's empowerment, stuff around environment, things are not really talked about by traditional mainstream political parties every day. This is what we're hearing young people want us to be focusing on. So it's been such a wonderful journey, I think, for everyone involved over the past year and a bit. And we're looking forward to specifying what those plans are. And just to reiterate, the differences is bottom-up, and difference number 2 is, I think it's going to be quite specific in its prescriptions and not just motherhood statements.
Okay, pretty much we can say that TN50 is focusing for the entire nation. But what has the rural people and the people in East Malaysia has got to gain from TN50?
Well, I can say that, I mean, this TN50 covering, I mean, every, in fact, as I told you earlier, urban and as well rural areas and semi-rural areas as well. So if you look at East Coast, like Sabah and Sarawak, I think they have, in fact, we have engaged, I mean, the ministry have engaged with them, and they have given the aspiration what they would like to see in Sabah Sarawak in future. So, like one of the vision I can tell you that the Pen-Borneo highway, which is already materialized right now, you can see that. So these are one of the aspiration, I mean, by the Sabah Sarawakians, where they want to be more, I mean, concerned about their living and especially on the rural areas. So whereby I think we have addressed, I think the Malaysian and the Barisan Nasional government have addressed many issues, and it's not everything can be solved on one day, but it will take time a little bit, I mean, to solve most of the issues. So probably, especially on the young generation, young youths and young voters in rural areas like Sabah and Sarawak, they came out and they are looking more at job opportunities. So these are things we need to look into it. Like Sabah Sarawak, in case Sabah Sarawak, we can promote on environmental. You know, there's a lot of job opportunity in environmental as well, and also nature, and as well we can see a lot of youth development in rural areas. These are things I think we are addressing now, and then probably we'll. It's already in the implementation. It's not to say we have never done anything yet. We have done many issues we have addressed, and then we have find job opportunities for them. You know, they have to come across to Peninsula to find a job. All these things. So probably in future they might find a job, you know, near their villages. You know, this is what in the pipeline. So that's what we can say that for now.
Do you think that such jobs will appeal youngsters in the coming ages? That you know, working in the villages, because most of them are coming to city to earn their living. Do you think?
But we should not forget about agriculture as well. See, I mean, we are now everyone heading towards, you know, technology, and we are in upper hand, we can say. But come back to nature. You know, we still need agriculture-based country. Our country, we should not forget that our country was a agriculture-based country before. So in rural areas, I think agriculture is, we must give an important for agriculture industry, whereby it's a lot of opportunities in agriculture business. You know, so that's what young generation. I mean, today young youths are not they're not concerning about their lifestyle. They want a more, you know, modern lifestyle. Everyone want to adapt to modern lifestyle. So probably we need to educate them, and there are a lot of opportunities in rural areas as well. So a lot of opportunities there. So we need to guide them as well. So I think we are ready to guide them.
Sure. You told me that Barisan Nasional manifesto will be out on the 7th of April. Okay. Looking back into PH's manifesto, where they promised free education and repayment of PTPTN loan once they reach 4K salary range. Sure. Do you think this is feasible?
In a word, no. Only because it's not coupled with a clear revenue generation plan. Sure. They want to take away GST, which will, depending on what version you hear from them, will set us back at least 20 billion, because if they bring back SST at the old rate, and then we assume some sort of increase from 2014 simply because of GDP growth, say you're down 20 billion already. All these other promises around PTPTN, around toll abolishment, around royalty from 5% to 20%, oil royalty, those all cost billions. And without getting into too much details, and I've said this elsewhere, you're looking at anywhere between 75 to 110 billion a year whole from Pakatan's list of promises. I think they got smarter in the way they structured their manifesto and said things like, oh, we will abolish tolls berperingkat, slowly do it. Slowly could mean 50 years, right? Just basically the way we're doing it. And in fact, it's under Datuk Sri Najib that we've actually proven that we want to abolish tolls.
Yes.
And then we just, we're going to make a new one without any, right? We've done a new one without any. So those are the things that I think, in a word, it makes their manifesto extremely dangerous. It's either they will not fulfill the promises, or they fulfill them and to the great detriment of the future generation. And that's really the message that we'd like young people to at least consider. Yeah. Young people are many of them are on the fence. I don't want to hard sell too much and say the other side are just pure evil and we're the best thing since sliced bread. Those days are over, right? And I'm happy to say even in this period of battle time, I'm happy to say even Pakatan, some of my Pakatan colleagues, they're Malaysians too. They think their version of the future is better than ours, and I'm sure many of them do this sincerely. But I think at the end of the day, when you go to the ballot box, when you think of which side to pick, I know for young people there might be a temptation to try something new,
right.
And that's something we need to as BN folks, we need to comprehend that possibility. And I hope that in the end, young people, although they might be tempted just to change for the sake of changing, just vote in the new sexy thing, and not stay with the guys who have been around since forever. I hope at the end of the day, when they look at the two sets of manifestos and really the kind of futures that both sides are offering, they're very different ones. If they were close, I'd be worried. If manifesto BN dengan Pakatan ni lebih kurang, I actually would be worried personally, because I think then people would say, right, so if they're both about the same, why don't I just take the new one? But because they're so different, there are real implications for voting in this side of the fence, the other side of the fence, even for 5 years. I know some people are saying, let's just vote them in, and then if they don't do a good job, we vote them out again. That's not really, it doesn't always play out that way, number one. Number two, even if they're only in there for 5 years, they can do real damage to the economy, to the future, if they fulfill all these things that you want them to do. So I think that's really my message. Even though it might be tempting to do so, just look carefully and think that this is a critical period in our growth trajectory, and we can't play around with 5 years.
I also would like to say, I mean, it's impossible, we look at it by Pakatan Manifesto, which is, I think, abolishing the GST and then the tolls, whatever they're talking about. Talking about just about GST, I think it's proven. I mean, we can say our economy has been, in 2007, we have achieved our GDP 1.3, and we have also 5.7% of we have achieved. And all this shows that, I mean, GST is irrelevant. So many say that, I mean, GST is irrelevant. I mean, for me, I couldn't accept that. I mean, many younger generation especially, they don't understand that what is GST all about. So first thing, they need to know what is GST all about, and then what are the difference in between GST and tax, what we have before. So I urge all the youths especially to understand what is GST all about. And Malaysia is offering the lowest, if you can see, among all the top, countries, underdeveloped countries who are implementing the GST. This is one of the lowest, GST service, offered by Malaysian government. So these are things, if we don't have GST, so where are we going to depend? So, of course, the oil prices, have already been dropped very tremendously, and we need to be an income. So this could be a replacement income, whereby a lot of many young generation don't understand this. And they just follow whatever opposition says that, GST is bad, we need to, our cost of living is going high. No, not really. I personally have seen many areas, the people, the younger generation can spend in one case, I can tell you, recently, then one, Apple had a sale, warehouse sale. Many younger, generation, there was almost 1,000 of people, I think, mushroom in that shopping mall, and over the day, I think they cancelled that sales, right? So, I don't understand when the younger generation says that, the cost of living high, and you are so want to grab all this, expensive stuff, all that, in fact, it is an attitude. No, we can generally we can say this is the attitude of the younger generation today, and we need to have a saving as well. So, in order to the country is growing growing, and we need to look at our own economy as well. So hopefully, the youth today will be more responsible citizen. That's what I would say.
Yeah, well, you spoke about the economic and the culture that they spend, but there are some youth nowadays that they are working double jobs, because the cost of living is quite high according to them, but they say they can't, bear the cost, so they have to work like dual jobs. Some even do side business, although they work on a full-time jobs. So how is this got to say with the culture of spending? Because some people, they really can't spend, although they wish to, but they can't. So how is this going to overcome with the youths?
I think my personal opinion is that while I agree with what Sathiah mentioned, there is a group of young people who are privileged and are happy to spend on lifestyle. Right, are happy to spend on lifestyle, on gadgets and all the rest of it. But there is a large amount of young people who are struggling. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that. That life's not easy. Where we differ from Pakatan, I think, is on our diagnosis of the problem, as well as our prescriptions of the solution. I think our diagnosis of the problem is much less sensational. It's not that it's because the whole country is corrupt and therefore you're suffering, some crazy sort of correlation between GST and paying some debts elsewhere. It's not that sensational because I think we understand economics and we understand that it's difficult for people everywhere. It's not just in Malaysia. It's a function of how the world economy is evolving. It's a function of inequality over decades. Inequality breeds resentment. And I think that's where increasingly, even I think us in BN realize that while we are proud of GDP per capita, big numbers like that, we know that doesn't paint the full picture. And we've got to think about how we ensure there's less inequality across regions, across ethnic groups, across any kind of social cleavages that exist. So I think that understanding, that acknowledgement that things are difficult is very important first. You diagnose a problem by saying, right, so there's some things that we can control, some things we can't. So managing expectations of young people, also important, right? But that begins by being honest with them, by saying that, look, we're not going to fix this overnight. It requires maybe even a fundamental reform of the economy. We need to move from just low cost competitiveness to something a bit more fundamentally strong, like based on technology, based on key investments in key areas or economic areas, so economic activities. We need to build a few champion industries. What does Malaysia want to be known as? Do we want to be known as a startup hub? Do we want to be known as a place for Islamic finance where not just Muslims get involved, but non-Muslims as well? Digital economy. We've made some tentative steps, right, with the DFTZ and all the rest of it. But that's part of our story to young people. Young people need to understand that there is no quick fix to this. It's not that if you suddenly stop GST, this problem is going to be solved. It's not, right? But that's where we need to balance, being realistic and also being very deliberate about what we actually do to fix this. Prescription-wise, that's what I mean. Building, I think, new sources of competitiveness that are long-term. Why does Singapore, for example, seem to always come up high in the rankings? Because they know how to evolve very quickly. 10, 15 years ago, they were known for, maybe more still as a trading investment kind of location. Now, yes, they do that, but there's also this huge investments about being a startup hub. So why are they able to do that? Because they're nimble enough, because they are very clear and deliberate about what sources of competitiveness need to exist in their country for a horizon of 10 years. If that after 10 years that doesn't work anymore, they fix or they change to something else. So that's the kind of, I think, prescription that BN would like to advertise and say that we're thinking in that way. We're not thinking about short-term fixes, taking away GST, giving you free tolls. That's not a game changer. That's simply fixing symptoms and not the real ill. And the real ill is we need new sources of competitiveness, and under BN, under Datuk Sri Najib, I think that's where we are going towards.
Right. For the coming election, how important are youth votes? Okay. And are they the game changer for the coming elections?
I would say that I think the young votes, the younger generation especially, which almost about 6 million, going out. Most probably the first-time voter, there will be the young voters, segment. I would say that they will be more towards in favor to Barisan Nasional, which have delivered. If you look at it, the previous election, we have always have the, people always threaten about, the new young voters. But the truth, I can tell you that the more younger generation joining our parties, especially Barisan Nasional, you can see that. And a lot of the followers for YBKJ as well. So this shows that, the younger generation have a trust, on the current government. So that could be a benchmark for Malaysian youths, especially for the younger generation, to vote for Barisan Nasional.
What about Undi Rosak, which is trending, and people out there, they don't want to come out and vote because maybe they are not interested, or they just want to spoil their votes. So what do you have to say about it?
It is a sorry state of affairs when many people choose not to vote. But I differ from some colleagues on both sides of the aisle when I say that I think it's also a democratic right for them to choose. It's not good for anybody. We won their votes, right? And I'm sure Pakatan won their votes too. And I think it's perhaps an indictment of both sides that there are so many people unregistered. I think their last count was 3.8, 3.9 million unregistered. Yeah, and then you've got people who register who apparently want to go and spoil their votes. Yeah. So that's, I don't know how many it ends up being. So I think after these elections, we're only a few weeks, months away from the big day. So there's really not enough time to think about this right now. But after the elections, I think both sides need to look very closely at themselves and see how is it that we fail to inspire a significant minority of young people from being interested to cast their ballot. Because I don't think it's political apathy. If you are doing an Undi Rosak movement, that means you're not apathetic. It means it's a deliberate, purposeful choice to spoil your vote. So something is wrong with both sides. We don't have time to think about that now. It's all about the ones who have actually registered, the ones who are intent to vote. And hopefully in the next weeks we are able to convince some of these Undi Rosak leaning folks that rather than spoiling your votes, it's better to vote BN because this next 5 years is crucial.
All right, so before we wrap up the interview, maybe I can get this point from both of you. So what do you have to say to those fence-sitters out there to come and vote for Barisan Nasional? Maybe I can start with you.
My advice to the younger generation is, especially for the fence-sitters, first thing, you must be more responsible, citizen first. The country is heading towards Transformation National 2050, and we must give a full support to the Barisan Nasional government in order to sustain the present government and then the wealth, and then of course we're talking about the future of this country. And let's say we can say that many countries has been tried before, and we can see what it happened, like Syria and many countries in Middle East have been tried and changed the government. A lot of issues happen in that countries. So it's a great lesson to Malaysians, especially the young voters. If you think about your future, if you think about care about your children, if you care about your families, you care about your community, if you care about Malaysians especially. So you must be very more caring and as well as responsible citizen as well.
And maybe what would you like to say to those fence-sitters?
To those fence-sitters and generally to all voters, I think it's important at this point that politicians aren't seen to be talking down on them. And I'm not just doing that for that reason. When it gets closer to the date, you start being very reflective about why we're even in this. Why are we interested to be politicians? And that's because we have a set of beliefs of how we think we can assist for the future. Some politicians generally across in any party, some of us tend to suffer from delusions of grandeur. We think we are the best, and we think our way is the only way. So I want to be careful with that. I want to say that I'm pleading for votes, and I am pleading for young people to really consider casting their vote for BN. Although it is an old party, although it has made mistakes in the past, and although maybe you think it hasn't changed and reformed in its outward manifestation as quickly as you have liked. I hope that young people and fence-sitters especially will really look at the facts dispassionately, look at the manifestos, I keep saying that, look at the policies, because one thing we know about young people, rightly so, they're not so interested in partisanship, they're interested in the future and policies, right? So please, if that's what you're interested in, look at both sides of policies, decide. I've tweeted before, if you look at both sides of policies and think that Pakatan Harapan's policies are better and Pakatan Harapan's policies are more likely to be done and implemented, and you genuinely feel that's good for you and your family, then okay. But do that with a clear mind of what those policies are. So that's one. The other one is around, like I mentioned lastly just now, about how we've changed and we reform. I think in many ways, BN is a very different animal now than it was even 10 years ago. We've suffered 2 electoral setbacks. We didn't lose. We hope to not lose this one as well. But we suffered in 2008 and in 2013, and there's been a wake-up call. It's up to you to decide whether we've changed enough or reformed enough. But I'd like to remind people about how, maybe 10 years ago, it's not easy to have this kind of forums, right? 10 years ago, we wouldn't be talking to TMI.
Exactly.
But now you've got Ketua Pemuda, myPPP, you've got a Cikgu Umno Youth guy, but still an Umno Youth guy talking in English to you. Yeah. Some things have changed at the youth level. Even our Prime Minister is talking about bottom-up approach with TN50. These are all things that would not have occurred just 10 years ago.
Before.
Correct. So I think while young people always want faster change, give us credit, please, on what we've done right. I hope that credit, once you give it, is enough, coupled with the fact that the manifesto, we hope, will prove to be better and more responsible and the right one for the country compared to the other side. Those 2 reasons, I hope, will convince enough fence-sitters to say, right, even if BN is not the most exciting brand at this point, it's still the right one for the next round. And I plead for your votes, and I plead for you to make that call.
Thank you.
All right.
So we come to the conclusion of our interview session with 2 of the dynamic young people here. So do look out for our next session of the Inside Talk. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.